Okay. All right. So, Brett Harvey, welcome to my podcast, A Conversation About Art. You are episode 29. So, please tell our viewers and listeners who you are and what you do.
My name is Brett, and I guess actually, before I even say who I am, since I'm starting to talk now, I will. The first thing I tend to say when I do any sort of public speaking is that I do have a stutter. So if I stutter at some point, just be patient. I'll get it out eventually. um, but I'm a sculptor. I'm an artist. I primarily make sculptures. Sometimes I make paintings and prints. I live in Naples, Florida. My wife and I moved there from New York City 3.5 years ago. We're excited to be here. I have a big, beautiful shop that you can see behind me. Huge by New York standards, not necessarily huge by any other standards. But I've got a gantry crane. I can do the things I need to do here, which is wonderful. So I make primarily figurative sculpture. So I make clay models first, and then I go through a series of molds to eventually cast in concrete. There are steel and wood elements that go along with the cast concrete figures, and I occasionally make things that are non-representational. I've made some plywood relief pieces in the last couple of years. I've been printing with steel on plastic, which has been fun. A lot of that is kind of exploring my love of geometry and some really kind of what I believe to be our universal humanist ideas, and I think that's probably most of what I do.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds great. I'm amused by the comment about the size of your studio, because it's like that's probably like a 2-bedroom apartment in New York.
Oh yes, my shop is probably about the size of the apartment. My wife and I, Lauren Amalia Redding, we're both artists, and we lived in Astoria, Queens for a while, and we had a 1-bedroom apartment there that we both lived and worked out of. I think the apartment was maybe only 350 or 400 square feet, and we turned the bedroom into a sculpture studio by putting masonite down on the floor, and we built a Murphy bed and put that in the living room, and the living room had 4 bicycles, a Murphy bed, Lauren's easel. It was a wild time.
A Murphy bed. What's a Murphy bed?
Murphy bed is a bed that folds down from the wall. So
Yes,
I built a big cabinet. Or Lauren and I built a big cabinet. She helped me finish and assemble it. We transformed Lauren's studio / living room into our bedroom every night.
Yes, I see.
So we loved it. We thought it was really fantastic. But we eventually
It sounds
got to
fantastic.
It was, but it took a tremendous commitment to live that sort of lifestyle with 2 working artists both needing space to make work. Trying to figure out a way to live in an expensive city, have a studio to make things, and then also still be able to save money for the future and all that stuff. So that was our solution.
Okay. What was I going to ask you just now about that same place? Oh, how long did you 2 live there?
We were in that apartment for about 4.5 years, I think. We were in New York for for just shy of 10 years. So my wife Lauren and I we met at the New York Academy of Art we started there in 2009, and we met in an anatomy class.
Yes, of course. Okay. And so, I mean, I guess this is really for my own curiosity rather than asking you things about your career and art in general, but you've piqued my curiosity with the description of this place that you were in for 4 years. So then I wonder about making these changes and moving things around in the apartment. How did that affect? Did that affect in any way at all? Like, I don't know, getting your deposit at the end or something?
No, we had trouble getting our deposit back, but not for anything that we had done to the property. It was just because the landlords were not necessarily the most honest people in the world.
Yeah.
But we were careful to to make sure that we maintained the space. So like I said, I put masonite down on the floor of the bedroom, so the wood floors were totally totally covered.
I bet.
Yeah. I had ramboard and then masonite, so every square inch of the floor was covered, and it was taped down with painter's tape. And so after 4.5 years, we were able to just rip all of that up, and the floors were exactly as they were when we moved in. So, to do that, I wasn't I didn't have my welding equipment on site. All of that stuff had to be I had to find creative solutions in order to do that part of my work. So
okay.
I wasn't welding or doing anything extremely dangerous there. I was really just modeling in clay and making some plaster and silicone molds.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for indulging my curiosity or nosiness, depending.
No.
But okay, so then, talk to me a little bit about your relationship with sculpture. I'd like to know, I guess, how you started sculpture, and then, yeah, let's start with that. How did you start sculpture? How did you find it?
Let's see. So I actually began my artistic journey, so to speak, as a painter. As a kid,
painter?
I could, yeah.
Okay.
So as a kid, I could draw reasonably well. I was the kid in every grade school class who could draw better than anybody else, and so I felt like that was something that I had to pursue, and just based on the exposure that I had and what seemed to be the logical path, I went into painting, and I ended up going to a BFA program at a little school in New Hampshire, and by the time I was finishing that program, I realized that I was really enjoying designing compositions. I have a real love of geometry, and so that design process was fun. I liked building stretcher bars and stretching a canvas, and I liked framing the painting when it was done.
Really?
I didn't really like making the painting. That was more work than anything else. So I had been exposed to sculpture when I was there. One of my favorite instructors there, an artist named Marcus Green, had said that I drew like a sculptor, and that he wanted to see me pursue that. There was someone who ended up teaching a couple sculpture classes there, named Kate Achel. That might not be her name anymore, but she was an alumni of the New York Academy of Art and had this, kind of strong structural idea about how to, uh, assemble a human figure. And so I took a couple classes with her, and I was totally hooked. And I thought that, maybe I was supposed to be splitting my time between sculpture and painting.
Mm-hmm.
So since I had the background in painting, I knew I needed to learn more about sculpture, that I had just, gotten a taste. And so after taking a year off in between undergraduate, after undergraduate school, I applied to the New York Academy of Art to major in sculpture. Painting just started kind of slipping away. And I'm at the point now where, I might make a painting every year or two, but it's definitely not my primary focus. There's certain ideas that I think are better explored through painting, but my paintings tend to be explorations of form and space, and it's just easier to make the things in a actual three-dimensional realm, rather than having to create the three-dimensional
illusion
form and then overlay the illusion of it onto a two-dimensional surface. It's like an extra layer of complexity for me. So it's just having the physical object in front of me, and being able to construct it is a lot easier. But maybe that's because I tend to work from my imagination. So creating something from your imagination and then immediately translating it onto a two-dimensional surface is a lot less intuitive for me. It's easier to skip that step and just make the three-dimensional form.
Okay, so do you ever draw at all?
I do. At my at the studio that my wife and I share here in Naples, Florida, we have a weekly life drawing group that we host. So we try to draw, from a live model, at least once a week. I don't know the last time I made a drawing as a finished product. Most of my drawings are just, sort of, exploratory ventures. They're, studies of some sort, and they're, they tend to. My drawings tend to function as sort of diagrams of a three-dimensional form, where I'm trying to, as quickly as possible, I'm trying to, create some sort of a map of a surface or some sort of a diagram of the kind of architectural idea of a skeleton that I have, in my own head, and then all of that, extra anatomy, is just, sort of layered on top. I think drawing is incredibly important, and I'm really grateful that I get to do that on a weekly basis. It is an important part of my practice.
Did you ever have classes when you were at the academy with Randy MacGyver?
Yeah, actually, that is the class that I met my wife in. So.
All right,
Yes.
That's awesome. I love the hell out of that guy. He's the best.
He is. Randy MacGyver. He, I believe he studied at the Art Students League with Bridgman. Is that correct? Do you, or he at least had a huge influence from Bridgman and had this sort of exaggerated, stylized way of expressing structural anatomy that I found to be really approachable, and it was a fantastic class to be to be thrown into in my first semester at the New York Academy.
First semester, that, oh yeah, because you were a sculptor and he's very involved. I guess I don't know if he still is, to what degree he's involved with the sculpture department. But I think his class was mandatory for sure. I think for sculpture majors, just at some point, because I remember that I took every anatomy class that I could with him, and so at the end I took one of the classes that was mandatory for sculpture people. I took it as an elective with him so that I could take the class with him.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because he's just the boss.
Yeah.
But I don't know about all of his studies. As far as I understand, I remember that he mentioned having gone to also being an academy graduate, and I think he also said that he had to apply 3 times.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's like crazy that somebody of his skill. I mean, the demands of applicants change through time. So I guess at that time they were just like, oh my God, so exigent. Okay. But okay, so I guess I wonder if you ever heard him say anything about drawing not being like a finished sort of thing. It's just that I remember him saying, I mean, I took so many classes with him that I think I asked him or whatever, because you know that I love drawing and everything. And among all the other things that he has said, that stuck with me a little bit, and I was just like, oh, Randy, how could you, like in a funny way. But he was like, yeah, drawing isn't like a finished thing, and he's so studied and complete. Oh, no. Yeah, so I guess that's why it stuck with me, because I obviously, respect his opinion and everything, so like I wonder if he ever said that. Okay, but let's get back to your work. Why, so from the time when you discovered sculpture, why do you think you have stuck with it?
Why have I stuck with it?
Besides what you said about how, having the object in front of you and all this stuff, like why do you think you've stuck with it?
I have, let's see. So when I first graduated from the New York Academy, and I was without a studio, just trying to figure out how to pay for rent in an expensive city. I did try to go back to painting. I had this, sort of idea that, well, sculpture is a lot more demanding in terms of resources, and let me just spend some time. I can explore some ideas through painting, and I never, I don't think I don't know, maybe I made like one little painting that was only I don't know, 6 inches by 8 inches or something. I got frustrated, and I just lost interest, and I really didn't make work for a while until I was able to figure out how to create a little studio space in the apartment that I was living in at the time. I really have a strong need to make three-dimensional things. Even when I was painting before, I discovered how much I loved sculpture when I was in undergrad. As part of my foundations class at the New Hampshire Institute of Art, I was exposed to ceramics, and I fell in love with throwing cylinders on the wheel, and I would get lost in the ceramic studio for 8 hours at a time and forget to eat and just make hundreds of tumblers, because that's there's something about the about the physicality of making things that really is it's a real deep part of me that I really don't even know that if I understand it completely. I have family members who are in construction, and it's just I think it's I think it's a deep part of many human beings to want to make things.
Sure.
That's part of what sets us apart and differentiates us from from a lot of the animal kingdom is the ability to to not just make tools, but to make tools that make other tools, and to
Yeah, yeah.
and to make things that are complex representations of the world around us and ideas and feelings. It's something I haven't been able to get away from, even when I've been limited in terms of space.
Okay. Okay, so what is your work about?
My work is about my work is an attempt to create something that is universal for human beings. I think that I think that people all come with the same. I think people all come with the same sort of ability to respond emotionally to different ideas, and I want to create some sort of a object, whether it's a painting or a sculpture. I want to create an image or an object that sparks people's curiosity and starts to get them thinking about what it means to be human, why they do the things they do, whether or not those are good things or bad things, maybe how to be a better human being, how to be better to people around them, how to help take care of this this fragile society that we find ourselves in today.
Uh-huh. Go ahead, sorry.
So I spend a lot of lately I've been spending a lot of time thinking about ancient people, thinking about what the world was like before before history, thinking about evolutionary theory, and trying to work some of those ideas into my representations of the human form as a way to prompt these larger humanist conversations and get people to have some sort of perspective on life, to keep people from getting bogged down in the day-to-day emotional grinds that we tend to find ourselves in.
Okay, and what kind of information do you put in your work to try to conjure those thoughts and feelings in the viewer?
So, up until very recently, a lot of my compositions were formed out of poses that I would find myself in when I was going through, my own struggles in life.
Poses like with your body?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would be locked in conversation, with my wife, trying to figure out, uh, like, major issues, trying to grapple with, the, with the place that we, found ourselves in, thinking about, in, often thinking about, my own shortcomings and trying to figure out how to be a better person, where I, where I was succeeding, where I was failing, and those really, in those really intense emotional states, I would find myself in a pose, and I would use that as the basis for a composition, and I would use that sort of introspective moment as a launching, point to try to think about how, this is the same, sort of just human stuff that everybody has to deal with, and that was the primary, there was a primary source for my sculpture for maybe 8 years or so, and in the last couple of years, it's become apparent just how fragile our society is, and it's scared me the way that the idea of pluralism and just accepting that people have different views, and that that they might be just as legitimate as your own, despite how different it is equally valid, and that we need to work together to explore those things and to be truly open-minded to one another. The sort of the way that concept seems to be disappearing has been a little scary to me, and so I've been thinking more about larger social issues, and about how much human beings need one another. We are a social creature, and the reason why we are where we are today, the reason that we're able to have this conversation is because people have come together, and they've worked together. We have a lot of problems to solve still, but to do that, we need to remember that everybody is a human being, and I'm trying to I'm trying to create multi-figure compositions that start to talk about those ideas. I'm interested in geometry, as I mentioned, and I'm fascinated by the way geometry has been used to encode information about the geometry of the Earth in different ways throughout history. There are many people that claim this is complete BS, but but a lot of people, but many people, believe that the measurements of the Great Pyramid in Giza contain the same proportions and ratios as the geometry of the Northern Hemisphere, and there's all sorts of examples in ancient religious texts of these repeating numbers that also can be linked back to some of those same ideas about geometry. So I have no idea if any of those things are true, but I romantically want to believe that they are, and I think it's a interesting way to to layer some of these ideas about humanity and the and how we really do need one another, because we as of right now we only have this one planet, and we really don't have any other place to go at the moment, so we need to get along.
Okay. All right. So I really liked how you were explaining how you explained how you pick the poses, or you were picking the poses for the work that you were doing a little while ago. But I mean, I figure there's some of that as well for the multi-figure poses, because, basically like what you were saying, I mean, we're really not that different. Even if we are, there's like a little bit of both. We are, in a way, we are completely different, but we're also not that different.
Right.
So, the things we feel, anger, love, happiness, and all that stuff. We might mention also when we talk about beauty, the feeling that beauty elicits. Also, like, I've mused about it being really probably or very likely very similar, or if not the same, from person to person, like cross-culturally, cross-time, everything. And so it just it makes a lot of sense to me that while you're having like a really intense discussion about trying to understand something about yourself or other humans or the world or whatever, like the pose that you found yourself, the bodily position that you found yourself in became like the expression of that issue that you were trying to work through. And so like then that became the basis for a sculpture, and I think that's really cool. And it makes a lot of sense that you try to convey that information about like trying to say that we feel the same thing because we take this same pose, meaning, all humans, we take this same pose when, when we try to work through something, like, when you're squatting or whatever, like something like that. And it also, I think that we can say something similar about the geometry, and it's like, who cares about the people that say that's bullshit? Like, whatever. It's like, you want to go be a grumpy person? Fine. Like, you don't have to enjoy the geometry, whatever. It's like, we will enjoy it here for you. Because it's like, I myself have discovered somewhat recently geometry, and it's like, I had it in school, like, high school or whatever, and I wasn't.
I think I had a D in geometry in high school, even
even though you like it.
Oh yeah, I love it, but the way it's taught in school doesn't necessarily. It's certainly not intuitive. For my brain as an artist.
I mean, it's arguably lots of things that are taught in school are definitely not conducive to like that wonder and desire to learn about stuff. But I've been making just illustrations of like decorations for our door, and like I'm experimenting with crafts and other stuff that I want to get into. And I just looked it up on the internet, how to draw a hexagon, how to draw a 5-pointed star, for example, how to find the center of a circle. And I was, there's not necessarily much measuring stuff. I just have a compass that I somehow landed on me at the academy. I don't remember how that happened. But it's like, I was like, this stuff is really cool. And it's like, it's cool that the way to find the 6 points of a hexagon is the same no matter who does it. Okay, so like I think that consistency, that constance across, I mean, that is true no matter who is doing it, when they're doing it, where they're doing it. So it's like, I don't think you can argue against, I mean that's like saying, I don't know, the sun is not coming up tomorrow or something. It's such solid, like there's such comfort kind of in the solidity of that it making that kind of geometrical stuff part of your work as well, I think is perfectly consonant with what you were saying also about taking the pose and how this is how we all feel. It's like we also have this constant solid grounding company of geometry that is always true, always the same, something it's like truth in a way, because Anyway, I just think that's really cool. And well, I want to ask you other stuff. We don't have that much time, so okay. So then let's move on. And thank you for indulging my diatribe there. Okay.
Oh no, I'm happy to.
Okay, good. All right. So, Mr. Harvey, what is art in your opinion?
I think art is it's some sort of an expression of human feelings, ideas, or emotions through through some sort of task.
Task?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is such a it's such a difficult question, and I've had lots of time to prepare, and still when faced with that question, I want to answer it differently every time. It's, the thinker who's been the biggest influence on me and my ideas about what art is. I mean, I'm an artist, but I don't think that qualifies me to really know what art is. I'm a person who makes representations of the human form, and I inject my own thoughts and ideas and feelings, emotions into those forms, in hopes that they're going to resonate with other people, and hopefully prompt them to learn something through their own introspective explorations. I had a bit of a hard time trying to rationalize the amount of time and energy that I was putting into this pursuit at one point a handful of years ago. And I found this book called The Art Instinct by Dennis Dutton.
Yes.
And he's a philosopher who explored the idea of aesthetics from a Darwinian perspective. And he argues that art is an evolved concept that is universal to all people. Much the way that language is something that springs up in every human being around the globe, that kids aren't really taught to speak. We have to learn to read and write. That's a very modern thing, relatively speaking. But language is a universal. That's something that I think Steven Pinker has done a lot of work on that.
About language?
Proving that that's a universal thing that just arises in human beings. So Dennis Dutton was trying to make the same sort of argument for art, and he in that book came up with a list of like 12 different criteria that art tends to have, and it was like a cluster criteria, I think he called it. Which I think is quite useful for figuring out what might be art and what might not be. One thing that he argues is that people have a lot of fun arguing what is and is not art. Trying to take these cases from the edges of the category and is the Fountain by Duchamp, is that artwork? That's something that exists at the edge. That's a lot of fun to explore from a philosophical perspective. But those, those cases on the edge don't really tell us what art is. They're not good examples that help us form a solid understanding of what art is. I want to say that art, art is something that you just, that you know it when you see it. That when you see something that has been, produced by another human being, that carries a certain amount of emotion, a certain amount of virtuosity, that communicates feelings, that inspires awe. Those things are not exclusive to art. There are other things that can do that too, but art tends to do most of those sorts of things. But I mean, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, really, what it is that I'm, making as an artist. I have this, romantic idea that, there's certain things that we, that human beings are drawn to, that have, withstood the test of time. I make figurative sculpture because, we have all of these cool old, marble figures from, ancient Rome, and, maybe a few bronze ones left over from ancient Greece. And they are, fantastic objects that, people have been drawn to for a couple thousand years. It's like, something like that. Yeah. The fact that people still want to, spend some time looking at those things thousands of years later, that's totally amazing to me. I feel like, in that way, sculpture can be like that it can be like a time machine, that's that you can have a conversation and kind of, explore the humanity of another individual that, hammered into a piece of rock, or, modeled a piece of clay, thousands of years ago. It's a wonderful, tradition to be a part of. And I don't claim to really understand it, but I know that, that it's an important legacy, to leave for, for other people to be able to ponder their own humanity, and, to hopefully help them, make sense out of our human condition, for, lack of a better term.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I really liked your use, we're still talking, your use of the term task as part of your muse about what art is.
Yeah.
Because, what is a task? A task requires time. It requires physical work, physical involvement. It requires a certain amount of steps that the person doing the task will go through, depending on the complexity of the task. It also requires practice. And I really like those things as part of art, as part of the procedure of making a work of art. And also, I really liked what you just said about how looking at the sculptures, or any of the old art that we have access to, being a time machine. A previous episode, Martin Campos also mentioned that very thing.
Cool.
And yeah, it's really cool because, and that's why I was like smiling like a doofus, because it's like, when you look at the things by Sargent, or, like when they had that Michelangelo stuff at the Met with his tiny, precious little drawings, and you look at them and it's like, wow, he touched this with his skin, and he breathed on it, and his like breath came out of his mouth and his nose and was like all over this paper and stuff. And it's like, I mean, it's like there's like a couple of things. It's like, so, you know, that guy had skin and he had breath and he like breathed over it like a regular ass human, you know? Because it's like, I mean, you know, I don't know about you, you know, maybe also like some of these individuals from the past are idolized because of what they left us. You know, Michelangelo is idolized, Leonardo da Vinci idolized, and it's like those are regular ass people too.
Yeah.
In the sense that they had a physical body and, you know, they farted and pooped, you know, whatever. Like that kind of, that's what I'm saying. It's like very, very humanizing in that sense to think of them that way, in that, you know, he was a person, Michelangelo, you know, whichever one of them, and he also had to sit down to draw, and, you know, and anyway, and also, so like what he left over is effectively a piece of time travel, because, you know, the drawing itself has remained this entire time, but then you look at it and you're looking at a thing from when they were alive, you know, and it's like that is kind of time traveling. It's like, thanks to this object of art that was left by them, it's like we can now enjoy it and travel.
Yeah, I really like what you were saying about how we tend to idolize these figures, and that's something that I think that people in general tend to have a problem with, is that we tend to idolize people. When I was in undergrad, I was lucky enough to do a condensed summer semester in Florence, and I, you know, not really understanding how good of a decision this was, just kind of by chance, I ended up deciding to take an art history class when I was there, which, you know, I didn't realize what a good decision it was at the time, and then afterwards, I was like, wow, I just spent 5 weeks walking around Florence and seeing everything in situ, and really understanding the context, and in the art historian who was teaching the class, I can't remember his name. It was Alessandro something. The thing that he kept on trying to instill to us when talking about Michelangelo was that he was just a man, and he was in the right place at the right time, and he was able to capitalize on these traditions and these systems that were, you know, being built over the, you know, centuries before him, and he was just a guy. So when my wife and I went back to Florence on our honeymoon, we went into Santa Croce, and I, you know, saw his tomb, and I just cursed him out, because it, like, you know, even if he is just a man, he, like, you know, he set such a high bar, it just makes me angry. So I just yelled at him. I was like, "Oh, you." I don't want to curse on your podcast, but I had some not so nice things to say to him, and that was my way of showing him respect, I suppose, in a strange way. But yeah, the idea of remembering that, you know, even these people that do great things are just human beings.
Sure.
Is an important thing to remember.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And at the same time, though, I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, it's not negative that we put them on a pedestal, because, like, I mean, I think in the case of Leonardo da Vinci, or, you know, these people, you know, I feel like they earned their place in history. It's like there's a reason for which they're remembered at this point. And I like the idea of remembering effectively that they're human, a regular person, to remind us that the capability of aiming for what they aimed for and getting it is within everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that is the important aspect of remembering that is just a person, not to diminish their achievements, because they deserve every single drop of glory that they earned while they were alive, and every drop of glory they continue to get thousands of years later. I think they deserve it. It's like, what's the name of the chiaroscuro guy?
Caravaggio?
Caravaggio. Yeah, he killed a guy. He still deserves all the glory and accolades that we give him.
And the reason why I said that, I'm sorry. The reason why I was saying that I think we do have a problem with putting people on pedestals is that I think that when somebody's put on a pedestal, people often forget to think of them as a human. They start thinking of them as a god. And so yes, these people do deserve to be put on pedestals to celebrate the incredible achievements that seem like they're inhuman. But we need to just have enough perspective to realize that they're not gods, and that that they're that they're likely just as flawed as we all tend to think of ourselves. And it's the other sort of thing that's been kind of one of those really powerful thought-provoking conversations that I've had in life is like how do you balance your artistic pursuits with a family? Like my wife and I have talked about, well, Michelangelo made some awesome stuff that we're still excited to look at 500 years later, but was he a happy person? Did he have a loving family? I mean there's likely trade-offs for the amount of commitment that some of these people have put into their art. So that's where I think the idea of deifying some of these people gets dangerous, because you end up with a situation where so many artists are being this is a terrible thing to bring up, but people are canceling artists of the past because because they had terrible ideas about people of another race or people of another sex, and it's they were people of their time, and it sucks, but you're right, it doesn't take away from some incredible things that they did, even if they're murderers. So they still made powerful work, and I mean I wonder how many lives were saved by Caravaggio paintings.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
It's something that we can never know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, that's definitely a discussion, and somebody's going to have to start their own podcast about that, whether, separating the artist from the art, and because that is for sure a whole ass other conversation. Let me tell you, for me, I don't give a single solitary fuck, about what that person, if they were an asshole, if they were racist, I don't care. I really don't. If I like their work, I seldom give a shit about their life, personality, opinions. Seldom I care. Okay, we don't have much time, so you better answer quickly. Yes. I'm just kidding. There's no hurry. There's no hurry at all.
All right. Well,
no pressure.
Okay. Well, I will warn you that I am in South Florida, and there's a thunderstorm passing by, and there's rain beating off of the garage door behind me. So hopefully the noise isn't too...
okay. No worries. I thought you were going to say something about getting cut off, but it's no worry at all. No worries at all. It'll make the podcast nicer for listeners to have the sound of rain. Okay, so Mr. Harvey, what is beauty in your opinion?
I've been thinking a lot about beauty lately, actually, and I was really looking forward to this conversation as a way to get some of these ideas out and
Mm.
hopefully get some response from you or other listeners. But I, in my um, in my readings of people like uh, Dennis Dutton, and also of the and also um, following and reading people the um, like the like the ev- like the evolutionary biologists,
Mm.
um, uh, um, Brett Weinstein and
Mm-hmm.
Heather
Mm-hmm.
Hine. I've been thinking a lot about what beauty actually is, because it's something that philosophers have struggled with for eons. And I have an idea that I don't know if it's an original idea, that uh, beauty is actually a sensation that happens in your head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not anything that can be described by a list of criteria, or there aren't any sort of immutable traits. Um, but I think um, that beauty is a sensation that comes from the part of us that is programmed to recognize patterns. I think that we evolved to constantly be looking for um, patterns, as a way to guide us through the world. And
Mm-hmm.
we have emotional responses to um, these different sort of analogies, or um, uh, repeating ideas that pop up in the world around us. So I think that um, that when we see something beautiful, we're recognizing it as an analogy to something that's true in life. So it's um, it's if if we see if we see some sort of let's see, I I'm starting to lose my whoops, sorry, I'm sorry here, I just lost my train of thought and then lost my screen.
Oh, no worries.
All right. um, so I'm sorry, I just need a moment to collect myself here. So I've got some notes, and I'm trying to figure out uh, where I am here. Um, so something that I wrote in preparation for this is that uh, human beings, like other animals, are pattern seekers,
Mm-hmm.
and analogies are a specific type of pattern. Um, it's a pattern that's more like a parallel. A simple analogy, might be that Michelangelo is the sculpture, as Michael Jordan is the basketball. And if you know one of those figures, but not the other, then the context gives you, a vague sense of importance that those people held in their respective fields. Um, so um, I think that um, that I think really that we can find anything beautiful uh, as long as we're able to see some sort of a parallel to truth in our own lives. And that's what's made it so hard for a lot of philosophers in the past to to try to describe what beauty is because we can see things that are ugly and find them beautiful, or things that are terrible and find them beautiful in some sort of an absurd way. So I think that as I've tried to go back and read some of the philosophy about ideas of beauty, I feel like this idea that it's an idea in our own head that's just recognizing patterns really solves a lot of the problems that different philosophers come across. For me, the way that I try to make a beautiful figure is to think about the sort of patterns that exist in nature, in the human body, and to try to use that as a design language to design and construct a human figure from my imagination using those same sorts of principles. So there's things like all the muscles of the body are set up in an antagonist relationship. You have a bicep that that flexes your arm, and you have a tricep that extends your arm. And it's not quite so straightforward with every joint in the human body, but in general, we have that sort of scheme that leads to situations where instead of the body being like if you were to look at the contour of a figure, instead of having sort of a bulbous shape, we tend to see these sort of curving lines that are sort of offset from one another. And I do a lot with manipulating those sorts of patterns to try to make something that looks vaguely naturalistic, but really maximizes people's response to the image of a human figure. So I really feel strongly that this this idea of looking for patterns as a way to understand the world around us is deeply ingrained in in an ancient part of our brain that that we used to just to find food, to avoid danger, and as the imaginative creative human beings that we are, we've somehow landed in this place where I get to make sculpture and play with those things and communicate to other people in some sort of weird abstract way.
Okay, well, I think Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine are freaking awesome. So you obviously have good taste in that stuff. I haven't heard them talk about beauty yet, but I did get the Dennis Dutton book, and I started reading it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I started reading it, and I kind of got stuck in the very beginning because I wanted to read more about the study that he talks about, where these two artists from the ex-Soviet Union did like a survey in different countries, and then almost all the paintings ended up being a landscape, because that's what, according to the survey, people liked and stuff. And anyway, I just spent a ton of time reading. I mean, I didn't find the study itself, I don't think. I found the images, and I found a couple of interviews with the guys and everything, and that was really cool. But okay, so it's been an hour because this was a good conversation. I'm just kind of whining a little bit because I wanted to ask you more stuff. But okay, it's been an hour, and either way, I like your closing, your reply to the what is art question, what is beauty. I like it as a ending. Yes. to the podcast, so to this episode. So, Brett, please tell our viewers and listeners what you're up to lately and where your work can be found. Is there any project you'd like to show off or talk about? Do you have any upcoming stuff? I don't know, whatever you want to plug.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, I'm excited to be pursuing my first multi-figure composition in I don't know, probably since I was in school. I work with a gallery in Naples, Florida called Method and Concept Gallery, and they are a fantastic group of people who have been incredibly supportive of me. They have a beautiful location in the design district here with some outdoor space. So
nice.
So we've been installing some of my work outdoors there, and I installed a life-size figure on top of a 5-foot obelisk outside of the gallery there a couple of years ago.
That's really cool.
And you know, it sold, and you know, it didn't come back, and we didn't put anything out there this season. And I guess a lot of people were you know, annoyed at the gallery that the sculpture was gone, and so you know, I get to put something else out there.
Yeah.
So the maquette that's behind me here is most likely going to be going in that same spot. So I've got my work cut out for me, making a you know, multi-figure
nice.
piece cast in concrete to go outside of the gallery that hopefully should be there at some point this fall. So I'm you know, excited to start that. I'm about to order, you know, another 500 pounds of clay and
so
and you know, build some armatures and
Yeah.
you know, start, you know, getting to work.
You need a whole ass other studio to store that, huh?
Yeah.
Clay.
Yeah, that's, you know.
What's that, like half a ton?
Quarter ton.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I probably have 500 pounds of clay in my studio right now, but you know, I've been working on, you know, life-size individual figures, and that takes up the majority of my clay. And you know, so the two figures in this composition, if one, the female figure, if she were standing upright, would be equivalent to like a 6'4" tall person, and the male figure will be like, you know, equivalent to like a 6'8" person. So it's two very big people, and
Nice.
it's a big project. It's going to be a lot of mold making, and I'm, you know, excited to get lost in that for the next several months.
I'll
So-
bet. You feel
So,
like in your own country there.
Yeah. So it's you know, projects like that, you know, just, you know, the physical demands of doing all of the mold making and, you know, casting myself are, you know, a little extreme, and it really does burn me out. So the last you know, the last large piece I finished was, you know, it was over a year ago, and I've really been you know, as I've switched gears and started to you know, move more towards these multi-figure compositions, and, you know, a slight shift in my ideas. I've you know, really been you know, taking some time for myself, and, you know, kind of trying to mentally prepare to dive into a big project where I, you know, really probably won't do much else for several months.
All right. Well, that sounds awesome and exciting, and I'm excited to see pictures, and, you know, who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to see it in person. But, you know, what you were saying just now about, like, not making more than making something like a year, you know, finishing something like a year ago reminds me again of Randy. Because I don't know if when you had class with him, he did this thing where he shows the class his work at the end of the semester.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so I had classes with him, and then I was his TA, and he did this every time. And, like, at the end of that very end of the semester, like the last class or the class before last or something, he would do that where he would show the class his personal work. And not only was it obviously just amazing, But he showed this relief sculpture thing that is gigantic. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you remember, I mean, Randy was probably already a little old when he was teaching you, so he was old when he was teaching me. And it's like this guy who is like, just, I don't know, so spunky and just full of impetus and energy, enough to make this thing that's bigger than him, okay, in sculpture. And whatever. The thing is that because I'm gonna gush about gush about Randy, and it's like he's making this gigantic thing for years. Okay, so it's like because he was showing the same progress, not the same progress of the same piece every time that I was in class with him, and then when I TA'd for him a couple of times afterwards. And it's like, wow, you know, we really forget. You know, maybe you don't, but I definitely forget. I get taken a little bit by the illusion of productivity because of social media.
Yeah.
I'm just going to blame things on social media.
Oh, please do. Yeah. I just took like, my participation in social media really waned over the last few years, and I'm at a point right now where I'm trying to be more involved there and put myself back out there again. But it's a challenging task emotionally.
For sure, absolutely.
Just to be involved with that and see what everyone else is doing. I feel like I feel like I have an idea of the piece that you're talking about with Randy. I remember this giant relief that he was working on with multiple figures, and I want to say maybe it was even a two-sided panel. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and like the top view of it was like this really sharp triangle shape, like wedge shape.
Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so that was like the top view, and then if you had the view of like this short flat side, there was like a lady. So that was like a whole ass sculpture, a regular 3D round going around sculpture, like going into,
right.
Because like that short flat side was kind of like a door that the lady was walking into.
Okay.
And it had a freaking chimera on top, and he showed us the before and after of that, because when he started the chimera, he hadn't designed the comparative anatomy class, so with animal anatomy. And so then he showed us then after what he learned by designing the comparative anatomy class, how he changed the chimera, and it was like this freaking mind-blowing creature because it was populated with this new knowledge that he got.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's like that, that is inspiring. And it's like, you know what? I hope Randy effectively is glorified in the future because he's totally a Leonardo da Vinci guy,
Yeah, he's a very talented guy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like he draws, he paints, and sculpts. He does all three of them. Because that's another thing that he said. He was like, I was like, I wanted to get, so I knew that I had to get good at this stuff before whatever, and so like, yeah, he's a boss at all three of them. Anyway, whatever. We must finish. Thank you for listening to me gush about Randy. All right, so thank you, Brett, for joining me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words and your thoughts. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Feel free to let Brett and I know what you think of this conversation in the comments section, and I also invite you to subscribe to my audiovisual channel, because more of these conversations are coming. I also invite you to like this video, share it with any and all pertinent individuals. If you want to support Brett, myself, this podcast, or all three, the links will be in the video description below. So thank you, everyone, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.